Your brain can't tell the difference between something you're experiencing and something you're describing in the right tense. That single glitch in human cognition explains why some people reprogram deep habits in weeks, while others repeat the same goals for decades and never move. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly how your mind filters language and why two words rearranged can be the difference between a statement your subconscious acts on and one it quietly discards. Chances are the way you've been talking to yourself has been working against you every single day. Think about the last time you set a goal. You probably said something like, "I will be confident," or "I'm going to be wealthy." Feels productive. Feels like progress. But something strange happens when you phrase desires in future tense. Your mind encodes them as distant, unresolved, perpetually approaching but never arriving, like a horizon line that moves as you walk toward it. Researchers studying internal speech patterns noticed something that changed the entire conversation around self-talk. Subjects who used present tense, first-person phrasing, "I am calm," "I handle pressure well," showed measurably different physiological responses than subjects who used future tense versions of the same statements. Heart rate variability shifted. Skin conductance changed. The body responded as if the statement were already true. So why does tense matter so much to a brain that supposedly knows the difference between now and later? The answer lives in how your mind processes time linguistically. When you say "I will be," your brain treats that as an instruction to file away. A plan, a to-do item with no due date. The subconscious receives it the same way you receive a vague calendar reminder set for someday. You acknowledge it, then you keep doing whatever you were already doing. Present tense operates on completely different architecture. "I am" activates identity-level processing. Your brain doesn't debate it the way it debates a prediction. It cross-references it against your existing self-model and starts looking for evidence. This is the same mechanism that makes you notice a car model everywhere the week after you buy one. Your attention system receives "I am" as a description of current reality, and it begins filtering the world to match. The gap between those two processes is enormous, and it gets wider the deeper you go. Your subconscious mind has no clock. This sounds like a metaphor, but brain imaging work on temporal processing confirms it. The regions responsible for unconscious pattern matching and behavioral automation operate outside linear time perception. They respond to emotional intensity and linguistic framing, not to calendars. When you feed your subconscious a future tense statement, you're handing a clock to a system that has no idea what to do with. 1. Present tense bypasses that limitation entirely. "I am disciplined" arrives as a status report. The subconscious treats it the way an operating system treats a configuration setting, as a current parameter, something to enforce right now. Your behavior starts adjusting to match the setting, often before your conscious mind even notices. This is why athletes have used present tense visualization for decades, even before the neuroscience caught up. A sprinter sitting in the blocks with eyes closed saying, "I am explosive, I am fast, my legs drive through the ground," is doing something measurably different from one who thinks, "I'm going to run my best time." The first sprinter's muscles show microactivation patterns consistent with the described movement. The second sprinter's body stays neutral, waiting, because future tense tells the body to wait. But tense alone only explains half the mechanism. The first-person element carries its own weight. Third-person self-talk, "he is confident" or "you've got this," has its uses. Some research suggests it creates useful psychological distance during acute stress. When you're panicking before a presentation, "you can handle this" creates a tiny gap between you and the fear. That gap helps in the moment, the cost shows up downstream. Distance is the opposite of what identity change requires. When you want to rewire a deep behavioral pattern, you need the subconscious to fuse the statement with your self-concept. Third person keeps the statement at arm's length. A helpful coach standing outside the room. First person walks through the door and sits down in the chair. "I am" registers as self-authored truth, and self-authored truth gets prioritized over external instruction every single time. Here's where it gets strange. Brain scanning studies on self-referential processing show that first-person statements activate midline cortical structures associated with identity maintenance, the same regions that light up when you think about your own name, your childhood home, your face in a mirror. When you say, "I am patient," your brain processes it through the same network that stores your sense of who you are. future tense third-person versions of the same statement route through entirely different networks. Planning networks, abstract reasoning networks. The statement gets analyzed instead of absorbed. The difference between analysis and absorption is everything when you're trying to change a pattern that lives below conscious awareness. Consider what happens when someone repeats, "I will quit smoking," versus "I am a non-smoker." The first version acknowledges the current identity, smoker, and places the change somewhere ahead. Every repetition actually reinforces the present tense identity it's trying to escape. Your subconscious hears, "I will quit," and parses it as "I currently smoke," and "I have plans." The plan gets filed. The identity persists. "I am a non-smoker" creates cognitive dissonance. Deliberately, your subconscious checks this against behavioral evidence, finds a mismatch, and something remarkable happens. Instead of rejecting the statement outright, the brain begins generating micro-behaviors to close the gap. You reach for the cigarette a half-second slower. You feel slightly more uncomfortable lighting up. The dissonance becomes a gravitational pull toward the stated identity. This mechanism works because your brain prioritizes internal consistency above almost everything else. When a first-person present tense statement conflicts with current behavior, the brain treats it as an error to be corrected. And the correction runs in the direction of the statement because "I am" carries more authority in your self-model than behavioral evidence does. Your brain would rather change what you do than change what you believe you are. That's a staggering design feature when you think about it. And most people activate it by accident, in the wrong direction. Every time you say, "I'm so forgetful," or "I'm bad with money," or "I'm just not a morning person," you're programming the same system with the same mechanism. First person, present tense. Your subconscious receives the configuration update and adjusts your filters, your attention, your automatic behaviors to match. You become more forgetful. You make worse financial decisions. You feel heavier when the alarm goes off. The system works perfectly. It just follows whatever instructions it receives, with zero regard for whether those instructions serve you. The asymmetry is what makes this worth understanding. Negative first-person present tense statements program instantly because they align with existing evidence. Your brain finds confirmation everywhere, and the loop tightens within hours. Positive present tense statements take longer because they create dissonance that must be resolved through behavioral change. The mechanism is identical. The friction is different. Tearing something down is always faster than building. But both use the same doorway. Some skeptics push back on this by pointing to the obvious. Saying, "I am wealthy while your bank account is overdrawn" feels absurd. And they have a point. If the statement is so far from reality that your conscious mind rejects it as ridiculous, a secondary process kicks in. Your inner critic generates counter-evidence, and the dissonance resolves in the wrong direction. Towards disbelief, the statement bounces off. The calibration matters. Effective present tense statements sit just beyond current reality, but within the range of plausible identity. "I am building wealth" works where "I am a billionaire" doesn't. "I handle conflict calmly" works where "I never feel anger" doesn't. The subconscious needs a gap small enough to generate productive tension, but large enough to create actual movement. Too small, and there's nothing to resolve. Too large, and the conscious mind vetoes the input before it reaches deeper processing. This calibration window explains why generic affirmation lists fail for most people. A pre-written statement that happens to land in your plausibility window works. One that overshoots it gets rejected. The difference is personal, specific to your current self-model, and impossible for a generic list to predict. The people who succeed with present tense statements are almost always the ones who write their own, because the act of writing forces you to find your own edge, the boundary where "I am" feels like a stretch, but still feels like it could be you. Language shapes perception at a level most people never access consciously. Every sentence you direct at yourself passes through a filter that sorts it by tense, by person, by emotional charge, and by plausibility. Then either files it as a plan, discards it as noise, or installs it as an identity update. Two versions of the same idea, carrying the same intention, the same desire, can land in completely different processing bins based on verb conjugation alone. The version that changes you arrives in first person and present tense. It speaks as if the thing is already true. And your subconscious, which has no clock and no skepticism and no patience for nuance, takes the statement at face value and starts remodeling the house to match the blueprint. You've been handing your subconscious architectural blueprints every day since you learned to talk. The question worth sitting with tonight is simple. What exactly have you been building?